Chodesh, of course, have got rather complicated bits and pieces. Davening in the morning is rather long, but let's start at night. At night, davening is exactly the same, except for the fact that we add in Yale V'Yavo, which is a special prayer that's recited in the Amidah, which we recite on Rosh Chodesh. Right? We recited it over Sukkot as well. But of course, when we recite over Sukkot, we added in the word B'yom HaSukkot Hazeh, and now we add in Rosh Chodesh Hazeh. What happens if you forget to say it at night? If you forget to say it at night, you do not have to go back and repeat the Amidah. That's good news, right? Why is that? Because the essence of the Rosh Chodesh davening is really in the morning. That's when the korbanot were brought. That's when the sacrifices were brought, and we added in the minute we add things into the davening. So we added into all of the davenings that we've got. So, but if a person forgot to say it at night time, so it's not so fundamental, and it's okay to just finish up davening and not go back to the beginning. No.
Never in anything? Never?
Not normally, no.
So why do we start the hard at night?
Oh, Yom Tov starts at night because that's coming from Bereshis already. That's coming from Bereshis, right? It says over there that the Gemara dashes out that in the verses in Bereshit, which says Vayi Erev Vayi Voke Yom Echad, that it was evening and it was day, the first day. So and from there the Gemara dashes out that God created the world, that the Jewish days begin at night and run through to the next night.
Why is that? Is it like, I know we don't pray to the moon, but we certainly go out and sing to the moon.
Okay.
And does that have something to do with the moon's importance?
The moon. Yeah. Yesterday we went through this whole thing. The moon is incredibly important. The moon is also incredibly symbolic of the Jewish people, and that definitely has something to do with the fact that we begin our day with the minute, when you can start seeing the moon, nighttime as it falls. That's when our day begins. I have a theory, which most other cultures, their day begins in the morning, which I think is a much more logical way to begin. Right? The sun comes up, and that's the beginning of your day. Now, I think that's got something to do with why our day begins at night. That we don't follow the logic. We don't follow physical logic. We follow the logic of God, what God lays down for us to do, and we're going to be different from everybody else. What's fascinating is I don't know at which point dates started changing at midnight. Right, nowadays, days, right, in the secular world anyway, days, the next day begins at midnight, right? It becomes yesterday was the 13th of October, so today is the 14th of October. When did it become the 14th? Midnight. At midnight, right, when we hit 12 o'clock.
I suppose it's when the 24-hour time came into effect and midnight became 0000. I suppose that.
Which, did you know when that was? I don't have a clue. I don't know. When I was a kid growing up, many years ago, I was never ever aware of the 24-hour clock. We weren't exposed to it at all. Everything just worked according to AM and PM. Although I think, if I remember correctly, which is quite possible that it's not correct, but if I remember correctly, I think Europe used the 24-hour clock. But I don't know when that came into being. But okay. We're talking about something which is relatively new. It's interesting that the world, or at least the Western world, now uses a system whereby it doesn't follow the sun or the moon anymore. They've just decided for themselves when they're going to do this. Right? I think that's pretty interesting. Why is that? Because the sun and the moon, for thousands of years, were always the symbols of the creation. They're always the symbols of the fact that we live in the physical world that God created for us, and we've got to live inside of it and utilize it properly. And along comes the Western world and says, no, you don't have to worry about any of that. We're just going to make the day from 12 to 12.
Islamic also go on the lunar?
The Islamic calendar follows a lunar calendar, but interestingly enough, what's different from the Islamic calendar and the Jewish calendar is, let's have a look and see, because it really is quite fascinating actually. The Jewish calendar uses a lunar calendar, a lunar year. It follows the moon. but it also uses the sun as well. Right, and that's why when the Torah says that Pesach has to fall out in the spring. Right? As Chodesh Aviv, Tishmor es Chodesh Aviv, you should keep the spring months. Seasons are all attached to the sun, not to the moon. Which means like this. Right here, we just moved into a year where we're going to have 2 Adarim. Are you familiar with this?
No.
Normally you've got 12, there are 12 Jewish months, right? But in order to make sure that Pesach not be too early this year, they're going to add an extra month just before the month that Pesach comes in. Adar, it's not given another name. There's Adar Aleph and Adar Bet, right? And it's going to add another month. Why is that happening? To add an extra 30 days in to make sure that Pesach is not going to fall out in the winter, because the Torah says that Pesach has to be in the spring.
That means Pesach can be really late.
This year, when is Pesach going to be this year?
End of April.
No, it's
It
right
won't
at
be.
the
It won't be
middle.
the end. Pesach always normally falls in
middle.
between the middle of March and the middle of April.
Right. Between the
I think
middle
it ends
sun.
towards the end of April.
Ends towards the end of April, which means that it's going to start around the middle,
Okay.
which is probably maybe that's the latest that it gets. And then what you'll see is over the next few years it will drop back 11 days each. Right, there's an 11-day differential between the lunar year and the solar year. So each year over the next couple of years it will drop back another 11 days,
Yeah.
until at some point there'll be another leap year. And a leap year, Jewish
That's
leap
the same
year.
in Islamic faith, but they don't have the leap year.
Oh, so what's
Yeah.
the pshat? According to Islam,
Yeah.
they follow a lunar year, but they don't have, it's nothing's attached to the
Yeah.
solar at all, to the sun.
So the Ramadan keeps moving.
Oh, so
throughout
what
the-
happens?
yeah.
All of their festivals are shifting back 11 days backwards every year. Again, because it is differentiation. The solar year is 365 days long. The lunar year is 354 days long. And that means that every lunar year is 11 days short of the solar year, and every lunar year is going to be 11 days earlier than it was the year before. So fine, we come along and we add in that extra leap month, and we take care of keeping Pesach more or less where it needs to be, right? However, in the Islamic culture, Islam, the religion of Islam, follows a completely lunar year, and that means that it's always in a state of flux, a year. And that means that every year their festivals are occurring 11 days earlier than the year before, and that's why sometimes Ramadan, for example, is in the summer, sometimes it's in the winter.
Yeah.
And it actually takes, it's a 40-year cycle to get it back exactly to the same day that it was 40 years earlier. It takes a 40-year cycle to be able to line it up.
Sense, so because like our festivals are so intrinsically linked with the season in which they fall within. So
Yes, and whereas in Islam it's not, right? In Islam it's linked to the month that it's in,
okay.
but it's not linked to a season. Now, why is that? I'm not 100% sure, but Judaism is a very agricultural religion, and the seasons are very, very important. They're important to us physically. They're important to us spiritually as well. That's why a lot of the festivals, food festivals, involve bringing fruits to Jerusalem, and the harvest, bringing in the harvest and the joy that went together with it. Right? I mean, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot were very important times of the year.
I would say maybe because Islam was founded in the desert and it's always the desert.
It's possible, right? It's definitely possible. I would imagine that maybe that's part of that is right. Part of it, of course, is to do with the fact that they don't have the Torah to anchor themselves down to, which means that they're not following the Torah, which means they're not following the Torah, and they don't have this verse telling them that the festival needs to be in the spring, and that means that everything can be moving in a state of flux. I once heard a fascinating idea, which I think is more applicable today now than it ever was before, which is that this idea of being in a state of flux means that in a certain way Islam is a religion. You know what? Like I said before, it doesn't have an anchor to it.
No.
And if it doesn't have an anchor, then it's possible to spawn what's been taking place over the last, several years of a religion which is preaching that a person should kill themselves in order to kill other people, and it's like a religion that doesn't have that it doesn't have checks and balances there somewhere. And the minute that's not there, so then everything is now being distorted and being, used for whoever wants to use it, for whatever they want to use it for. And it is important to point out that most Muslims are not fundamentalists. There are a lot of Muslims in the world.
Well, I'm curious. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The whole point was that we're discussing about how the Jewish day starts at night, whereas Judaism came first, and a lot of these other religions are based off the principles of Judaism. However, they seem to have not taken that part of the Jewish culture along with it.
There's an I think it's Rav Yaakov Emden, if my memory serves me correct, who says like this: the two major monotheistic religions of the world, of Christianity and Islam, are both founded on Judaism, right? For that, there's it's impossible to miss it. What did they do though? They made sure to change things so that it shouldn't have any obvious correlation, right? So, for example, even to the point where our Shabbat is on Saturday. Isn't it fascinating that by the Muslims, Shabbat is on Friday, and by the Christians, it's on Sunday? But they've both of them deliberately done something in order to change around that they shouldn't share something in common with the Jewish religion. Now, if you stop and think about it for a minute, it makes no sense. Which means if you say the world was created in 7 days, and on the seventh day God rested, and the Christians acknowledge that, and the Muslims acknowledge that, and yet what have both of them done? They've moved the day that God rested onto a different day, right, in order to give themselves their own identity, which, I don't know, theologically doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Well, they're following the Gregorian calendar, really, in some sense.
Well, the Gregorian calendar only came into being, very, very, very late.
So the Christian Sabbath has always been a Sunday?
The Christians moved I think the Christians moved their Sabbath onto Sunday earlier than that. I think it was probably around maybe 400 or 500 CE. But nevertheless, the idea of moving it, and they had a whole theory behind it, because Saturday comes from Saturn, right? Saturn, the what's called the muzzle of Saturn, the energy that Saturn generates is considered to be negative energy, and they wanted to move it onto something which was more positive. That's why they moved it onto Sunday. Good, right? Say whatever you want, but at the end of the day, what you're doing is you are now distorting the original story of the creation in order to serve your own purposes, which is good. I mean, in the meantime, what they're doing is, Rabbi Yaakov writes that, interestingly enough, what they're doing is that they are leaving Shabbat, which is the sign that God has between the Jewish people and Him. They're leaving Shabbat on Saturday, being we're the religion that celebrates Shabbat on Saturday, and the others have left it alone, right? And they've left us with our own identity over here of celebrating Shabbat on the correct day, and everyone else is celebrating it on a different day. Which is a lot of things that are done, which are in the various religions that are done, that are very much based on Judaism and very much part of Jewish belief. They distort them in every way they can to make sure that there isn't an obvious connection over there, an obvious correlation.
Did Ismail did tshuva?
Yishmael did tshuva at the end of his days. It says.
Do the Islamic know that?
they only know what they want to know. According to Jewish tradition, right? According to Jewish tradition, it says like this. In the Torah, it says that when Yitzchak died, when Avram died, so it says that Yitzchak and Yishmael buried him. And the Torah, the Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral Torah, learns from that even though Yishmael was older than Yitzchak, it mentioned Yitzchak first, because it says that Yishmael gave honor to Avraham Avinu by recognizing that Isaac was the what do you want to call it, the rightful heir. Thank you. I knew it was one of those grandiose, right? One of the the rightful heir. And it says that at the end of his days, Yishmael did tshuva. He repented. And according to Jewish tradition, at the end of days, Yishmael, the followers of Yishmael, are going to do tshuva as well. The problem is, like we spoke about before, until we get there, things are going to be very difficult. They're going to be very, very, very hard.
Does that mean they'll become Jewish?
No. The concept of doing tshuva means embracing monotheism according to God's definition of monotheism, and embracing the fact that the Jewish people are the chosen nation.
But would the Ishmael not have been Jewish? Or what? Not in the way that the term that we would use now, but as a son of Avraham.
Yeah, for sure.
Did he have a brit milah?
Yes, he had a bris milah at the age of 13.
Why was it at age 13?
Because when he was 13 years old when Yitzchak was born, and the command for bris milah was given to Avraham Avinu to give Yitzchak a bris milah on the 8th day, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Avraham Avinu that he should give a bris milah to all of his household, which included Yishmael, and Yishmael had a bris milah at the age of 13. There is, interestingly enough, a medrash which says like this: the Yishmael and Yitzchak used to have arguments with each other, and Yitzchak says to Yishmael, "I'm greater than you are, because I had my bris milah on the 8th day like God commanded." And Yishmael said, "I'm greater than you are because I had it when I was 13 years old." I guarantee you, having a bris milah when you're 13 is a lot more complicated than having a bris milah when you're 8 days old, right? And the fact that he was prepared to go through with it and to fulfill, his father's wishes is an indication of something. That's for sure.
Abraham never had a bris milah.
Avraham Avinu, he did a bris milah to himself. He was 99 years old when he made himself a bris milah.
That's commitment.
For sure.
He didn't have that fancy tool either. He just slide and slice.
It's the knives they use now.
And he didn't have any anesthetic either.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a very beautiful idea. Actually, if we're already talking about it, there's a very beautiful idea. It says like this, that there's a very famous thing that in Parshas Vayera, what's his name? Avraham Avinu was sitting at the entrance to his tent. It's the 3rd day after he's had his bris milah, which is considered to be the most painful day of all. And God brings out the sun, right? That it should be very hot, so there should be no guests, in order that Avraham Avinu should be able to have just to be able to rest up, have a day off after having been through such a traumatic experience. And it says that Avraham Avinu was sick that day, and the simple explanation of why he was sick was because it was the 3rd day after the bris milah, which is the hardest day. However, the Sfas Emes, one of the great Hasidic Rebbes, the second Rebbe from Gur, the Sfas Emes says that Avraham Avinu was sick because he didn't have any guests to serve. He so much wanted to fulfill the mitzvah of having guests that when he saw there were no guests there at all, he became sick from not being able to fulfill the mitzvah of Hachnasas Orachim, of having guests. And that's why God sent along the 3 angels that came in the disguise of nomadic Arabs in order for him to be able to fulfill the mitzvah so that he should feel better.
I was very surprised that Ishmael made tshuva, but when it comes to Esau, no.
I think I'll tell you. I think it makes perfect sense actually. Esav never made tshuva because Esav held until the end of his day that he was the oldest son and that he deserved everything that was given to Jacob. There were very fundamental differences between Esav and Yishmael. Yishmael was not born, Yishmael was born not to Sarah but to Hagar. Hagar's relationship with Sarah was one of a maidservant, which means that his relationship is very different. Esav was born from Yitzchak and Rivka, right? And he had the potential to be an Av, to be one of the others, one of the patriarchs, in the same way that Jacob was. But he blew it because he wasn't capable of living up to what it was that he was supposed to be doing. And therefore, he ended up being bitter and wanting whatever it was that he'd given away. He wanted it back, and therefore he was never able to do tshuva.
His head was buried
His
separate.
head rolled off into Maras
But,
HaMachpelah.
it makes you think. I mean, of all people, Esau should have been more. It was Yaakov's,
Yeah, for sure. But here, that's part of the human psyche, right? He felt that everything was coming to him, and he did not want. He wasn't prepared to acknowledge that that Jacob was a better candidate to take over the spiritual dimensions of the Jewish nation.
There was never any fear for Yitzchak that Ishmael was going to kill him. It just wasn't.
There was a fear that he was going to kill him spiritually. He was going to stunt his spiritual growth. That was the fear. And again, it's interesting actually that the differences between Esav and Yishmael perhaps are defined like that as well. Our fear of Yishmael is the spiritual power that Yishmael wields up to and including today. I don't know if you've ever seen Arabs at prayer? Have you ever seen any footage of the Hajj, right? When they go to Mecca, and they kill themselves because there are just so many, but there are 5, 6, 7 million people gathered together in prayer. That's an incredible thing. It really is. I don't know if you've ever seen any footage. If you can get a hold of some, take a look. I think it's pretty terrifying. You've got millions of people sitting over there, standing over there, praying together, and you can feel, even in video footage, you can feel the power of that prayer. Over here, behind the kotel, we don't even realize, because you don't realize how big the area is behind the kotel. But on the last Friday of Ramadan, which is considered to be one of the holiest days of the year in the Islamic calendar, so they can get 400,000 people gathered over there. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of prayer. The name Yishmael is a composite of 2 words, Yishma Kel. God will listen to their prayers. And the prayers of Yishmael are something which have a lot of potency to them. The good news is that Yishmael, it's written in the future, a yud at the front of something, so Yishma Kel, that ultimately God will listen to our prayers. But in the meantime, before that happens, we've got a religion which has got the most incredibly powerful access to prayer and the ability to reach God through their prayer.
More than some of the Jews.
I think it's something, again, it's like I said, it's like something, if you ever seen footage, I think this stuff is pretty scary. It really is. Take a look at the way that we pray and compare it to the way that we pray, compare it to the way that they pray, and maybe there is sometimes a lack of passion in our prayer, and a lack of commitment to our prayer, and a lack of excitement to our prayer.
I see them in the street sometimes. All of them get together. They don't care who's around. They bow down and.
No, I mean from Jews are like that as well, right? You ever tried using the bathroom at the back of the airplane? It's like, well, there's a minion going on. That's like, well, I need to go to the bathroom. Right? What now?
It was the weirdest thing. My first time flying LL, and there's a minion on the plane. Like, can you do this? I didn't even know.
Rabbi Schiller told over a story. It was hilarious. Years and years ago, to get to South Africa, it's going back like 35, 40 years or something. To get to South Africa, you had to travel through Europe. So him and another rabbi from the yeshiva, they flew to Zurich, to Switzerland, and from Switzerland they flew on to South Africa. And they're over there in the plane, and it's getting late. They have to have mincha, and there was a person in the plane who was very agitated. He'd never flown before, and he was very scared about this whole business. And he was convinced that the plane was going to crash and that something was wrong. And every time the plane shook, it's like he was busy, and they had to calm him down the whole time. And anyway, time's getting on a little bit, and these two have to daven mincha. They're the only two Orthodox Jews on the plane, and they have to daven mincha. So they get up and they get out their jackets and their hats from the overhead compartment to go to the back of the plane to pray. And all of a sudden, this fellow sees, right, they've been up in the air for a few hours already. All of a sudden, this fellow sees them putting on jackets. He says, I know. He says, there's something wrong. They're getting off. They're getting off the plane. I know it. There's something wrong over here. It's whatever, right? I mean, it's a.
Just wait till they start wrapping themselves up.
That's right. Yeah, there was something in America actually, with a fellow who put on his tefillin, and they were convinced it is some kind of something that was
A few times in history of flight.
Yeah?
Where a stewardess who doesn't know the religion thinks that they're wrapping something and they'll call it a bomb.
Whatever. It's a. So Baruch Hashem, we also pray. Here Israel's the most fantastic place. It really is. When you see people making minyanim all over the place, you really do. I have a friend. He told me that in the summer he went up to around the Kinneret. Now in the summer in the Kinneret area, it's saturated with from people. Right? They've got the 3 weeks off in what's called the Ben Azmanim in the yeshiva schedule, and there's masses and masses of from people over there. And he said that they were driving. He was trying to get to Tiberias to be able to daven mincha, and it wasn't shaykh. It was getting late, and he sees on the side. He sees that there's a minion over there, just pulled over on the side. So he pulls over his car onto the side like everybody else, and he gets out. He sees that minion's about to. It's just finishing. So he says, what do I do? So he says, you know what, he's going to wait. He'll wait a few minutes. So he waited a few minutes, and before you know it, there's like another 15 people have arrived, and everyone's davening mincha. And everybody's parked illegally, right? Just on the side of the road. Everyone's parked, blocking one lane in order to be able to daven.
Is that halakhically acceptable?
No, we're not going to get into this. It's a cute story. Don't get from on me over here. So he says, he said this is Israel. I don't know what the law of the land is. That he said, here, listen to this. A police car.
This is Israel, and you're talking about traffic laws. There are no laws.
He said a police car is coming down the hill, right? And you hear that they're calling something out over the loudspeaker system. And he's like, oh my gosh, they're all going to get tickets, and they're all going to get arrested, and they're all going to get whatever. And he says that as the car drives past, what does he hear? He hears the policeman screaming out, Ashreichem, Ashreichem, mi ka'amcha Yisrael. He says, you people are fantastic. There's nobody like the Jewish people. Right? It's fantastic. It really is. You see in Chol HaMoed, right? You see minyanim all over the place. Whatever, just make a minyan wherever you are. So we do that as well. We really do. Right? The power of Jewish prayer is something which is extremely potent as well. We have to try to utilize, we have to tap into that potency in order to be able to counterbalance the prayer of Yishmael, and that way we'll be able to undo the damage that's being done.
Where else do you see before a Hag or something on the buses, Hag Sameach?
Yeah, it's great, huh?
That's such a beautiful thing. I mean,
it's great. It's really great. And I particularly like on the buses where it's got the chairs that have been set aside for the elderly. So it says Mipnei Seva Takum, which is that when there's an elderly person, you should get up. But it's a saying, it's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. Right? Only in Israel we have something like that on the public buses. Mipnei Seva Takum. Right? When an elderly person comes, you should stand up. But what are they using? They're using a quote taken from a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. I think that's fantastic. I really do. We live in a very special place. And
in America, that has been it tries to be taught that you should give your seat to an elderly person.
No, I don't have any problem with that. In England as well, they have these things. But the fact that they use the quote from a Mishnah, that's cute. That's what I think. I think that's beautiful. That's not. I'm not talking about the etiquette, right? For sure, everybody should be brought up to stand up for somebody wwho needs the chair more than you do.
Foundations of Judaism.
Huh?
A lot of that etiquette is from the
Yes.
foundation.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Ethics, really, isn't it? Moral behaviour.
Moral behaviour, but where do we get our morals from? So an awful lot of our morals come from the Torah. The problem is that when you don't recognise that it's coming from the Torah, so then you can play around with your morals and your ethics, and you can apply them when you want to, and not apply them when you don't want to. That's another
beauty. That's the beauty of Pirkei Avos. I happen to love it. I think
it's very, for sure. It's very special. There's no doubt about it. Pirkei Avot. Anyway, we're going to stop over here, Mitzvah Hashem, and everyone. It should be a Simcha Dika Rosh Chodesh, Mitzvah Hashem, the first day of the new month, and hopefully it will be the first month of goodness and of peace and of no bloodshed in Mitzvah Hashem, and we should just be able to concentrate on building our relationship with God in Mitzvah Hashem.